The whole system is just outrageous, right? We've already made the decision, we're going to relocate our family to the Middle East. If you're making $1 million a year, you've given away $650,000 to the government. In reality, I think just a lot of people in Australia are going to really struggle, and they're going to just continue to struggle. Anyone that's got anything to do with technology or artificial intelligence and is building a business to be enabled in that way is not doing it in this country. They're just going to leave.
What's your advice to those people then?
Pray.
There's been years of our life that we've lived under tremendous pressure and stress and barely getting by, with no one to save us. Fair go, freedom, opportunity, like that's part of like the Australian culture. Feels like that's really all just a facade. Like it's not at all about fair go or freedom. That's the opposite.
But if I'm a young person today and I've got my wits about me and I've got an opportunity to call anywhere in the world my home, not sure I'm looking to build and create a life here in Australia. I might look to come and retire here. Australia has an incredible fucking brochure, which is our quality of life and our beaches and our way of life and our have it a go and our, like the Anzac spirit, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's fucking about.
Yeah.
But you got to fucking fight for that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't fight for that and protect it and guard it and make it happen, that's a real problem.
Welcome back to the Wild Success Show. We've got a very special episode. Today, we're actually it's a huge announcement that we have. And I'm really, really excited that you guys have had me here as a host to announce this announcement.
Thanks for hosting us.
No problem at all. You guys are bringing on a new partner into the business.
Are we?
Yous are. That's what I've heard.
Albo.
I've heard down the road.
Albo.
Yeah. Albanese. You brought him on as a
what you did there.
47% shareholder partner. I can't believe that. Tell us a little bit about that. How's that making you feel?
Look, thrilled to work with the government on new initiatives.
Yeah.
We're just trying to give back
like
every possible chance we can.
I love it. I love it.
Funny joke. We obviously posted about that and got some traction around it, but it's actually been quite amazing how many people legitimately think that he's now actually a partner. It's funny. The Americans, right? The Americans. I don't know if it's just because they can't conceive of a government doing what they're doing or if they just don't get the sense of humor that we have in Australia. But a lot of our American clients are like, oh my God, congratulations. No, you don't get it. Like, it's not a good thing.
It's satirical.
No one's asking for this.
Is that legit happening?
Yeah, in the comments.
Wow.
In the comments, they're like, well done, you deserve it. Well done. They're like clapping me.
One
I'm
of
like,
our-
this is not exactly...
A very close acquaintance's mother thought that it was legit. Like
Nice.
that it was, congratulating. Like,
Wow.
how exciting. I can't believe you're working with him one-on-one. It's just amazing.
Let's ride with that.
It's the power of Gigi's branding and marketing. Incredible. Legit.
Really good render on those AI images.
In all seriousness, though, you guys have been in business together for what's been the better part of 15 years.
Yep.
You have created an 8-figure business, all in, aspirations to get to 9, no doubt we will. And I'm curious, when the budget first dropped, what was the initial thought process that goes through your heads?
Well, I think that for me, I always like to think about a budget or a change to legislation or economic circumstances in like 3 different categories. There's what impact does it have on us as a family and as an immediate business? Then there's what impact does this have on the broader client base that we have, which is everyday Australians and Americans and Brits that are trying to make amazing things happen in their lives. And then I also like to think about it as well with regards to like what is if there was a younger version of Calvin about to do what he's already done, what does that journey look like now for him? Is it easier for him now to succeed or is it harder, right? And so my response to the budget that we just had was like, in some cases, a non-event because it doesn't really affect us because we've already made decisions because we already saw where this was headed. But then there's also parts of it that I'm quite outraged by because it affects the second and third groups to what I was talking about. So for us as a family, we've already made the decision, in previous podcast episodes, we talked about this, that we're going to relocate our family to the Middle East. And there is a lifestyle element to that. There is an opportunity element to that. There is a global connectedness element to that. And there's also a massive element of that, which is tax. You look at forget about the ability to sell a business, but just look at the cost of running a business in the Middle East versus running a business here in Australia. Before these tax changes came in, it is astronomically expensive to do that here. It is unbelievably cost effective to do that there. And I don't think people fully appreciate just how much of a difference that is, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're making $1 million a year in Australia, and let's say that's profit, you're at a 25% company tax rate, you're paying $250,000.
Yep.
If you were to take any money in the profits, the $750 that's left over for yourself personally, that could be up to 47%. So let's say you paid 25 cents on the dollar out, you already lost $250 to the government in the company tax, you got $750 left over.
Don't forget about GST.
Yeah, so the $1 million is you've already probably paid a couple of $100,000 in GST. But then after you've done and paid that money and you paid the cost of superannuation, you paid the payroll tax and you paid all of the other things, right? Workers' compensation, insurance, and all the other things just to get to that point. Let's say you make a profit, you lose 25% straight away. So now you've got $750 left. Let's say you took that $750 out and you wanted to live a great life with that money. You're going to pay half of that. And so you're going to be left with about $375,000, but you've given away $650,000 to the government. It's like a 65% net tax rate.
Yep.
And then on that, you've got your Medicare levy. On top of that, you've got your private health insurance on top of that. And then if you go to buy anything with that, after you've already paid all that tax, you're paying tax again on the GST of that. You're paying all. So the whole system is just outrageous, right? So that's the first problem. So we already made the decision to move to Abu Dhabi.
Yep.
And the plan was already to do that in January, February of next year. And so this is just absolutely confirmed that to be the right thing for us to do.
Yeah, solidified the direction of where we were going anyway.
Yeah. So that doesn't have too much of an impact for us. But the second group of people, what impact will this have on, the clientele that we've got? I think it's going to have a massive impact because especially for the Australian market, there's already a rampant cost of living, right? People are really struggling economically.
Yep.
And so if you've got less money left over, you need to try and find a way to make more money. And for so many of our clients, that's starting their own business, right? So you start your own business. There's a variety of little deductions that you can have as a business owner, and the government just wiped those out. So there's no trust distributions. Now it's 30% fixed. There's now no capital gains tax deductions. Now it's done based off inflation versus it done based off just getting a 50% automatic deduction. There's just a ton of different things that now make it harder in this business landscape to drive and to make a profit. And then at the same time, you've then got the third category of people, which is just the people that are trying to make something happen for themselves more broadly. They are not one of our clients. And there's not many mechanisms by which you can grow and build wealth. You're really going to either do that through building your own business, through investing in the stock market, which every Australian does anyway through superannuation.
Yep.
And they're already taxed that increasingly. That was only last year they changed the taxes on that. And then the third element to that is that maybe you invest into property.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the negative gearing component of that, I don't care too much about them removing that because obviously that was very kind of them to do that. We're only 4 countries in the world that offer negative gearing. So it makes sense for us to remove that from that process. But what I dislike about this, and that's me being very kind, is don't tell us that it's about intergenerational opportunity and intergenerational equity and trying to give the young people a benefit, when basically what you're saying is everyone that's already had the benefit of these rules, you can still have them, but we're just not giving them to all the young people that are coming through now. So it's like any advantage that your parents had, you just don't have now. They've just got rid of that.
It feels just like a giant gaslight.
That's 1,000% is what it is.
The whole rhetoric of it is.
It's 1,000%. And the rhetoric is, okay, well, now they're trying to encourage investment into more productive asset classes, but that's bullshit because you've removed the benefits on all asset classes. It's not like you've just stopped the benefits for property, but therefore made shares or business more attractive. You just wiped all of them out. So it is more productive, but not for us. It's more productive for Treasury because they're just going to make more money in tax. And what most people I don't think fully understand is that these are tremendously fucking complex problems. And I'm not going to be I'll be the first person to say that I'm definitely not an economist. And so I don't envy the position that the government's in to try to make it work. But I think honesty is quite important. Don't lie to us and say it's about one thing when it's clearly about another, right? Like you can say, okay, we want to incentivize new builds. Sure. But just because you remove the tax concessions from doing other options doesn't mean that now there's a heap more new opportunities available. Yeah. You haven't made new builds cheaper. Pauline Hanson came out and said that I think it was up to between 40 to 60% of the cost of a new build is not lumber or bricks or concrete. It's actually taxes,
Yeah.
regulations, getting everything approved. And so unless you have a dramatic increase in land supply and the economics of building a house get cheaper, that's very hard to do. And part of that, the reason why that's hard to do is because you've got government doing massive infrastructure projects that absorb a lot of the trade workers at huge margins, or people that would previously have been bricklayers or carpenters or laborers and now work on the NDIS and rorting the system, right? Just why not? And so the cost of building goes up, builders go bankrupt. Like, the system is not designed in any way for this to be actually an effective change. In reality, I think just a lot of people in Australia are going to really struggle, and they're going to just continue to struggle. And I think it plays very much into the Labor narrative of own nothing, be happy about it, receive benefits and handouts from the government. I think it's nearly 50% of our population here in Australia are paid either by the government as an employee or on benefits.
Yep, 53,
and so
I think.
The whole idea of tax the rich in Australia, the top 1% of income earners pay, I think it's close to 40% of all the taxes in the country, and the top 10% of income earners pay more than 50% of all the taxes in the country. So the reality is the rich are already paying a huge amount of that money, and I think what we're going to see even more is a massive separation between the haves and the have-nots, and particularly with AI, which we've been talking about quite a bit. Anyone that's got anything to do with technology or artificial intelligence and is building a business to be enabled in that way is not doing it in this country. They're just going to leave, because why would you bother doing it here? You've got an increasingly competitive market globally. You've got increased cost of energy and electricity here locally. You've got regulation here that's not positive. You've got a tax structure here that is perhaps one of the worst in the world. And the labor market is one of the most expensive in the world. The capital market is one of the smallest in the world. Like, it's beyond have a phenomenal beach and quality of life and safety of our shores, which, let's take nothing away from that. That is significant. If you're agnostic to that and it doesn't matter to you because you're a young, ambitious person, you're just going to go and live in another market, because why would you bother?
Those are that's pretty strong. Okay, so you mentioned 3 different categories. I want to kind of touch on the first 2, because one is centered around investment and the other is centered around really the everyday punter, your everyday entrepreneur that's trying to grow a business here in Australia. And so on the investment piece, the thing that I found interesting about especially the capital gains piece, is if you can imagine you're a Shark Tank, right? Or you're a Shark Tank investor, you're on Shark Tank and you're an investor on Shark Tank. And you're investing in a company, right? You're buying for a piece of equity. Do you think that because of these new capital gains taxes that have been introduced, that we're going to see a drop of investment? Because if I'm one of those sharks and I'm throwing my money in the ring for an investment, there's already a dilution on the other end of that, right? The whole point from an investor standpoint is the exit, right? Do you see, as far as the investment side of things, that you're just going to see an enormous drop off, at least in Australia?
Yeah, I think yes and no. But I think from a few different angles. So the first order consequence is, if I'm an investor, I'm chasing a rate of return. That rate of return is twofold. It's yield and it's capital appreciation and growth, right? Same as if I'm buying an investment property, I want to obviously have a high rental yield, but I also want to be able to sell it for more than it's worth. I think the tax changes that they brought in prevent people from creating wealth, right? Or at least the government takes a higher amount of the money that is there. So if the government's taking more money out of the economy for itself, then there's less money available for individuals to build for themselves, right? So I think that it would cause you to be more conscious of, okay, if I get into this deal, how am I getting out of this deal? And if I'm going to get out of this deal and it's going to cost less money, well, therefore the investment looks less attractive. And therefore I've got to be more selective, because I now can't afford to bet on the 50-50 case. I really need a sure thing, because the sure thing's still going to make it worthwhile, because I'm going to make so much money from that, I'll pay the tax, it doesn't matter. But all of those smaller businesses or those smaller opportunities, I go, well, this is a bit higher risk, I'm going to have to be compensated for that. And if I could invest into a small business in Sydney, or I could invest into a small business in America, or I could invest into a small business in Europe, the tax consequences of that are radically different depending on where I am around the world, right? And I really don't think the average punter in Australia fully gets this bit, which upsets me, because if they did, we'd be far more outraged about this. We are living in a global world. It's not just local anymore. You're not just competing with Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane or Perth. You're competing with the entire world. Capital is mobile. There's opportunities that we get from clients all over the world to make investments and to expand the business. People don't fully appreciate that. It's like, well, people will just not invest. And if they don't invest, that means less businesses in Australia have the opportunity to thrive, which means we're more vulnerable for overseas companies like the Metas and the Amazons and all the other businesses to come in, and they pay fuck all taxes in this country because everything gets expatriated back to America. So you've just got this sort of siphoning of wealth out of Australia to big multinationals in America because they're more lucrative investments. So unless you've got a business and economic landscape that is highly profitable and highly competitive locally that can bat above their average, why would you do it? Like, if there's two options on the table for the next Canva, and one is based in Silicon Valley and one is based in Australia, or maybe Silicon Valley is a bad example because they've got pretty terrible taxes as well, but it's one's based in Sydney and one's based in Texas. Well, the structure is completely different. Or one's based in Abu Dhabi. If I invest my dollar in Abu Dhabi, I'm keeping 100% of that money when it sells. And so I think there's a consequence that there'll be less investment as a result. There's also less money to invest because of these changes as well, because that ecosystem feeds itself. But then also for the businesses that are local, if the average person has less money available to them because of the fact that they're effectively paying more money in taxes through all of these different taxes, right? If that's the case, then they've got less money, discretionary spend to invest into businesses as a consumer with their wallets, which means that we've got decreased economic opportunity here in Australia, which puts pressure on those businesses. So it's at all supply state. You've got less business investment coming into the business. You've got less opportunity from customers that are actually consumers of the business. The business owner themselves have got less of a payoff to really push it and make that risk because they're not going to get that return. So I think there's a real problem.
Okay. Well, then how do people that are building a business, so you've got people that have already got pre-established businesses here in Australia. They might not have the money or the backing to be able to just take their nut and go over to Dubai in the same way that we are. What's your advice to those people then?
Pray. Look. So within the tax changes, let's consider that there's really two implications that are going to have a big impact on a small business here in Australia. The first one, which most people haven't talked as much about, but I think will have a huge implication, actually more so than the capital gains tax part. Most businesses actually don't sell. Most businesses just trade out, right? They just bleed out and die, right? So if you are lucky to get an exit, but selling a business is a bloody hard thing to do for all the reasons that we already know, and this has made it even harder again. But assuming that you do sell, you're going to have the capital gains piece, and let's talk about that in a second because there's a few distinctions that matter there. But let's say that you're just trading the business. One of the things that is the backbone of this country is small business and particularly family business, right? And one of probably the only real benefits that you get from running your own business is beyond the absorbent risk that you take on board is the ability for you to offset your income in a small family. Let's say Ash and I are running our own small business, not like Wild, but like a smaller business. Well, it's possible that maybe Ash works part-time outside the business or maybe part-time inside the business and looks after children. We don't have to pay the cost of childcare, for example. Maybe I'm a tradie, for example, but then the $250K a year that I make, which would typically be taxed at 47% because we run that through a family trust, I can take $90,000. We can distribute $90,000 to Ash as well. We're under that 30% tax rate, so we're paying 25, 27%. That brings our marginal tax rate down as a family. We get a few small concessions and deductions. That's happy days, right? Or I can take the profits and I can put that into a bucket company and wash that at 30%. All of that's gone now, right? Because now it's a fixed 30% minimum. So now everyone's effectively that's running their own business. There is no tax-free threshold effectively in the country anymore for small businesses. You're paying 30 cents on the dollar now, which is the equivalent of what a big business is paying at 25 cents, but you don't get the benefit of it. So, and that's going to have a real impact on small to medium-sized businesses. And there's also no benefit of having like investment structures now because you can't effectively recycle that money. Any money, you don't get a tax deduction now sending it to a bucket company. So you pay 30%, then another 30%. So that's a real problem, and it's going to slow a lot of small businesses down on being able to redeploy and reinvest capital. Because if you wanted to get your own business going or invest into property or build a nest egg for your family, it's very, very, very difficult to be able to do. So I think that's going to have a big impact because it means effectively a lot of small business owners that were making good money and were able to move that money around within a family to support a family and a lifestyle because they deserve to, right? Can't do that anymore in the way that they were able to previously. So I think that's a real problem. And I think that's going to push more stay-at-home mums actually into the workforce, which is actually better for the government because they're going to pay more tax and you're going to get more people into childcare, which I think actually is just quite a toxic way of approaching the raising of the next generation. I think it's pretty fucking disgusting, actually. And you had the Minister of Women and the Minister of Children come out and said that basically, and we should fact check this, but the statement was get them into childcare as soon as possible. Like it's the best thing possible for the children to be in childcare, which I think is an absolute fucking disgrace for the Minister of Women to say that the best thing for children and the best thing for mothers is that basically mothers should go back to work and that the children should go to daycare. Like many women are forced to do that, but I don't know many women that choose to do that if they had all the options available to them at all. So I think that's a real problem, and that the family tax structure and the discretionary trust, I think that's going to fuck a lot of family businesses. When it comes to capital gains, though, let's say you work your ass off and you choose to sell. It does depend on when you sell, because if you're selling at retirement, there's some different distinctions. But let's say we were to sell Wild Success. Currently, if the valuation of the business at point of sale is less than $6 million and it's an active business, an active trading business, then we get a double deduction. So you get a 50% capital gains tax deduction. Let's say it's $5 million. It then becomes $2.5 million is taxable. That's the part they've got rid of now. So now that we don't get that 50%. And the challenge with business, unlike property, is that you weren't starting from a capital base already. That you have a capital base. Let's say we've got an investment property in Belmont. We don't care about negative gearing. It's positively cash flow. It doesn't make any fucking difference to us. But it cost us $500 or so to build that. It's now worth just over $1 million. That's a $500K bill. But a business that's worth $1 million costs nothing because you built it from nothing. So you have all of that is now taxable. And that blows my fucking mind, by the way. Like, I used my industry and labor to create opportunities to employ people to take a risk, and now I've created something of value out of nothing. Like, it's fucking magic. And then you're going to tax the whole thing on that? That's a disgrace. So you get the 50%, but then because it's an actively traded small business worth less than $6 million, I get another 50% deduction again. So I'm still paying 25% on something that they didn't build, I built.
And you've already paid tax on your income along the way.
All the income along the way and everything else. But we would pay effectively tax on the $250. The new changes from July 27 means that I don't get the first 50%. It's at inflation. Now, if you've held a business for a very long time, 20, 30 years, it might be just as good, right? But if you've had a business for probably less than 10 years, you're probably going to find yourself in a position where actually, if you're fortunate enough to sell that business, you're not getting a deduction on that. It's going to be pretty marginal. And then even if you manage to work the numbers in such a way where you could get close to that 25%, it's gone anyway because you have to pay a minimum of 30%. So it's, we're going to give you these deductions, but in reality, you're still going to pay a minimum of 30 cents. So at the moment, we'd pay at maximum 25%. The minimum you'll pay from July is going to be minimum of 30%, but it could be a lot more than that as well. And if you're more than $6 million, you don't get that piece, which is why the Kinzo boys are fucking losing their shit, right? Yeah. Because they sold their last business for a couple of $100 million. Well, capital gains tax on a couple of $100 million is a huge amount of money, right? And so we were already going to have to pay capital gains tax anyway, because unlike the rest of the world, Australia, and this is not true of all of the countries, but Australia has a exit tax. Where you leave the country, you have to pay unrealized capital gains on your assets. So it actually works. We're in no better or worse position because we were already going to have to pay that money. But if we were going to move in July or in August 2027, we'd be paying more in that exit because we wouldn't get all the deductions that we're going to currently get as well. And what I also don't like, side point to all of this, is they've effectively brought in a death tax without saying it's a death tax. So there's now taxes that are being brought in where you have to pay capital gains tax on testamentary trusts. Effectively, if you pass away upon your death, that the trust money could be left for your children. that income from that is now going to be taxed as part of the 30% minimum on family trust structures, but also that if you were to sell a home that you don't live in as a dependent, if you don't live in that home as a dependent, after 2 years of holding that testamentary trust, now you're going to pay capital gains tax on that, which you didn't have to do previously. So it's like you've effectively chucked in a whole heap of different scenarios here that mean that you've just increased dramatically the amount of tax money that you can bring in, which again wouldn't be so much of a problem if you were just honest about it. But then you'd have to have a serious conversation about government spending and immigration, which we're not really having in this country, certainly under a Labor government. So,
yeah, very interesting. Obviously,
the bomb website looks really good though.
the one that for $600 million or something.
Yeah, a lot of money in that, huh? So it's interesting because there's two different types of mindsets on this, I'm sure. You're going to have entrepreneurs, business owners, and you're going to have employees. And so I'm sure you can appreciate there's a huge distinction between those two. But for the employees, the ones that are out there going, oh, great, here's another podcast with some business owners complaining about the tax laws again. Like, who gives a shit? What would you say to those people? How does it affect them?
I got some comments, but I'll let Ash speak on this.
There's a lot of ways that it affects them. Something that I've always struggled with when dealing with employees, we've always obviously loved and adored our employees, and we've always done the right thing by them. But there is an expectation of being able to grow within a business, create a career, increase your income earning capabilities. When more pressure is put on the small businesses by the government, it just means that all of that evaporates into thin air. So any extra that we are getting then goes to the government instead of us being able to reinvest that into our staff. So that is one way that it impacts on them for sure, because it means that there's just less to go around. So yeah, that was my take on that. So.
Do you feel as though that what's going to end up happening is, to your point before, that the government strategy as a whole is effectively to decrease the amount of people working for small and medium-sized businesses and to have more people working inside a government?
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I mean, it's terrifying understanding the statistics of how many people do rely on the government for money. Like, that's a terrifying statistic. And there's no doubt in my mind that there is a level of control that the government can then, enforce onto people when they're reliant on the government for money. So if they want to, I don't know, this is probably getting a little bit too like conspiracy vibes, but if they want to have a certain identification system or a vaccination system or any other system that they want to impose, and they want to be able to control the general population to be able to do that, an easy way is you don't get your money unless you comply. So it could be part of their strategy, but I like to give the benefit of the doubt and think that they really just all of the current systems are really just snowballed out of control, and they're clutching at straws to do whatever they can to fix the problems that they've created themselves.
Same to you.
Yeah, so I think there's a few issues if you're an employee. What I would say is this. My experience from looking at people and having conversations with people online is that I actually don't think it is I don't think there is necessarily a line in the sand between employees and business owners, or like employees and investors, for example, where some people that have a job love this budget and some people that don't, right? I don't think that's the case at all. I think actually, without being disrespectful to people that love the budget, I'm sure there's things in it that to love, but I think it's more of a break in the mindset of the ambitious person versus the non-ambitious person. So we've had a number of people that are employees, but they are highly driven professionals that make good money, that are outraged by the budget, partly because they go, if you get to a certain level of economic opportunity and you're starting to pay that top tax bracket of 47%, you're trying to do anything you possibly can to reduce your taxable income. And one of the ways to do that is through negatively weighted property. It's one of the only real deductions you've got if you're not running your own business, right? Because you can't distribute through tax and family structures, right? So when you're in that place, naturally you're sort of shackled. And for concept, it's like that means you're working till June for the government.
Yeah.
And the rest of the year is, so like everyone would do better if you had a flatter structure. Now, there is an argument to be made to go, hey, we have a problem in this country, which is a massive problem in this country, and there's a reason why this is the case, and I'll happy to explain it in more depth if we need to, but we tax income in this country at astronomical rates by comparison to global average.
Yep.
But we don't tax wealth by the same percentage, right? So it would be okay if you effectively did a bit of a Robin Hood strategy, right, where you took from the rich and you gave to the poor, or effectively you took from the people that have got assets and you then distributed to people that are making money. Because if you tax income but you give people the encouragement to make more of it, there's effectively more to go around. That makes sense. The problem is that there's a small number of people in Australia now that don't work but have huge assets because they built a nest egg, as they should, over their entire lifetime. But we have a population problem where there's not as many people now making money as much as there's people relying on the money that gets given. Yeah. So once that balance tips, we then have a real problem. And then creates a snowball where either you stop inflation and you reduce overall housing supply and the issues with that, but that puts Australia in a recession, and you then deal with the consequences of you're a government that has a country in recession, or you try to grow through that, but the amount of money they spend is just outrageous. Yeah. So I don't know what the exact amount of debt we have in this country is, but I think it's over $1 trillion. I think it's $1.2 trillion. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And so that's effectively a tax that our children are going to have to pay because that money is snowballing out of control. And so that's effectively meaning that we've taken that money and we've effectively invested that either and given that to big companies that have taken that offshore, or we've given that to people that have used it to create wealth through tax-advantaged opportunities. Yeah. That's gone now. So now you're operating in a market which has massive amounts of debt that has to be paid back at some point. And the only way the government can do that is through taxation. So you've got that as a problem, so they have to find a way to do that. We either need to have a much bigger population that everyone pays their fair share, right? Or we just need to increase the amount of taxes. And so, unfortunately, you're just going to have a higher tax environment. And so if you're an individual and you're looking to get ahead, you want to try and make as much money as possible to create the best lifestyle for your family as possible. But there is a scenario where the more you work, the more you get taxed, right? That's not a win for anybody. There's also not as much opportunity as well in a market where government is taxing the shit out of small business owners to be able to do that. Big business owners are a little bit different because they're obviously playing by a different set of rules. And a lot of the profits get expatriated over to the United States anyway, because where the big companies are actually to Ireland, which is tax-free, but there's a different set of rules there. But I think if you're an individual and you're an employee, you want to have the best chance possible to succeed and thrive. And so people that want to get into the housing market is not fucked because of the fact that we have negatively geared property in this country. It's certainly not helping people get into the property market, but it's not the reason why that's a problem. There's a variety of other reasons, like, for example, immigration, like, for example, housing supply, like, for example, the fact that it costs a huge amount of money to build new properties in this country. Like, it's actually enormously expensive to do that when it doesn't really need to be. And we have incredible natural resources that we really are not doing anything with whatsoever. And I get that those are very capital-intensive investments. But if you look at what Norway did, for example, with the Sovereign Wealth Fund, they decided to tax the gas. So I think it's the gas or the oil exports they've got, and they've got an obscene amount of money available to them. And we have the best produce and agriculture in the world. Ash's family has a farm and has always worked on the farm. We have an amazing opportunity to create genuinely a paradise here, but the way that they're running the government as a business just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. What do you think that the Australian government could do to get you guys to stay? Like, if there was a policy or a reform of some kind, what are 3 or 4 things that they could do to effectively get you guys to stay in Australia, to completely change your plan for the future? Like, we're planning to go to Dubai, obviously for the tax purposes. There's a lot that happens with the move to Dubai. Like, we talk a lot about what we get. When you're not talking about a lot about what you lose. Like, you lose a support network here. You lose family here. There's a lot in that. So, you don't have the power. But if you did have the power, what would you do if you had the power to control the government and pull some levers to keep you guys here in Australia?
Yeah, that's a great question. And probably because that seems so impossible, I've not really fully thought about it. However, if I was to answer your question now, we're not just moving to Dubai because it's a cheaper tax environment. We've been in Australia for 15 years running and building this business. And now we're at a point where we're making so much money, it becomes really expensive here. And I think one of the things that is important for the average person to understand is that as you grow and build a business or you build and create wealth, Australia has an incredible quality of life. And the way that the economics are structured in this country is you effectively have a pretty good gig up to a point. And then once you exceed that certain point, it costs you exponentially more money to have not exponentially a better life.
It's literally the system of tall poppy. Like it's that incantation of tall poppy in a system.
Yeah. So think about it in the sense of if you're someone that works in a business of any size, you've got a job of some form, your life making $100,000 a year versus your life making $450,000 a year is not marginally better, right? Like you're paying a lot less on $100,000. You still have all the benefits of living in Australia. It's still an incredible quality of life. You can still have, obviously you may not have the house that you want to have, or maybe you're paying a higher percentage of your income in rent. But the person that makes $450, in most other parts of the world, $450 gets you a whole different life. In Australia, it doesn't. Now, that's the blessing of being in Australia because we already have such an incredible opportunity. The person that lives and has government handouts on Centrelink has already an incredible global quality of life by comparison to mostly everybody else. So what we have is a situation where the status quo just by being here is already pretty phenomenal. But then as you make exponentially more, there is an increased risk. There is an increased regulation environment. There's an increased amount of money that you pay for taxes. There's an increased amount of money that you pay for staff. Like even just something as simple as like payroll tax. What a ludicrous fucking tax. I'm employing people to the point now I'm investing more than $1 million a year in staff, and you're going to tax me again for that. That just seems ludicrous, right? And so the bigger you get, it's like you have a bigger target on your back, and there's not an environment that is celebrated, right? And so I'm all for the redistribution of wealth. I think that's really important. Anyone that's played the game of Monopoly that understands the way that game works is that in order for that game to be enjoyable for people, you can't have somebody have all of the money and nobody else have any money, right? That game doesn't work anymore. People toss the tables and you have the French Revolution.
Not a fun time.
No, exactly. So you need to have a system that does that, but that needs to be done in a few ways. One, so that you are rewarding people that are doing well and encouraging them. I think the Americans do this well, where they have a culture of philanthropy, right? Where the government goes, hey, we're going to provide these services, but the free market's going to provide these services. And you've got incredible investors and high net worth families that then go, we're going to use our wealth and our opportunity and the benevolence of the opportunity we've been given to try to reward other people, right? It doesn't sit right with me that we should be in a situation or a culture as a society where we work our ass off to try to create abundance for us, and that instead of being able to have money left over to give to our children, that we're taxed on that money to give to somebody else that's not making those same choices. Now, to be very clear, absolutely, we should have a government system that supports in healthcare and education and support services, especially for the people that are in genuine need, right? So someone that has served in our military, we should pay nurses and teachers more money. Like, I'm all for those things. But you look at the NDIS as an example, and you go, hey, that is a premise, is phenomenal, makes complete sense. We should absolutely fucking back that. And everyone should chip in a little bit towards doing that. But the scope beyond that has gone so much further beyond that it's just outrageous. In Perth, where we're living now, there's a real rail project to build fucking rails, trains. It was quoted to be $3 billion. They haven't finished it. It's already blown into $15 billion. Why the fuck are we paying money for that? Like, you guys have one job. Build trains. It's not new. They've been doing it for a while. So could you imagine a small business going, it's going to cost us $3 billion to do this project. Oh, sorry, guys, it cost us $15 billion. Like, that's what I get frustrated by with the waste and the corruption and the bullshit, where it's like, hey, if you were running this business, if you're running the company like Singapore runs their government, or like Dubai runs their, like, I respect the efficiency of that, right? I've got no problems in paying money if you're getting value for money. But if you're working your ass off and you go, I know how hard it is for me to get this dollar, and then you're taking a chunk of this dollar, and I don't think it should be 47%. I think that's outrageous. I think anything beyond 25, 30% is probably pushing the limits of it. the difference of what you can reinvest if you're at 25 to 30% versus at 47%, like
It's huge.
Yeah.
And like anything that you would want to have when you start to make some money, whether it be a nice house, a nice car, nice clothes, be able to take your family on a nice holiday, all of that now, it becomes so ludicrously expensive to try to have it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, you know, there will be people that will criticize that of going, well, if you're making all that money, you should pay that money. But I'm like, well, you might only believe that because you're not making that money and don't ever see yourself making that money. But I can assure you, if you're making that money, you're not pro that money, right?
Yeah.
So,
and not only that, but the journey to get there too. Like there's been years of our life that we've lived under tremendous pressure and stress and barely getting by, with no one to save us. And that was the risk that we sacrificed to then be in a position now. So it's like, yeah, but also you didn't do those things. And there's been times where we've had our only resource has been ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people really forget about the journey that it takes to get to a position where you are and we are so blessed and lucky to be in that position now, but it's not like we just woke up and that was fell into our lap. There's a whole journey that people forget happens before you get to that point. And I think just to speak to your question, it's the mindset for me. I think the whole ethos of Australia, what's been drilled into us our whole lives has been fair go, freedom, opportunity, that's part of the Australian culture. Well, I mean, when I was younger it was, but it feels like as we probably become more aware as adults in business and we're, grown-ups now, that's really all just a facade. It's not at all about fair go or freedom. That's the opposite. And those things to us are such a it's a visceral value for us, especially the freedom piece. Hence why we wouldn't put our girls into school, because it takes away part of our freedom to do what we want when we want with them. Hence why we are looking at other options, because the weight of the lack of freedom, lack of fair go, lack of encouragement or opportunity or giving back to the people who are trying to make stuff happen, the scales have shifted dramatically. So we'll go where our values are in alignment with, such as places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi that are at the forefront of hey, we can see you're doing something cool and exciting. Let us come and live in our country. We got you. We're doing cool shit too. So I think the mindset that comes with how the government operates, it leaks into the communities as well. And then we see in so many conversations around you should pay the money or you should do this or I don't know.
I think as well for me, there's also something that has been present for maybe the last 5 or so years is a real loss of national pride and identity.
Yeah.
I feel as though that there was a period of time where people were celebrated for being Australian and wanting to be Australian, being proud to be Australian.
Yep.
And it's almost like in this last 5 or so years, there's become a culture of going, well, you should be ashamed to be Australian.
Yeah.
And so it's well, hold on. You want to be proud of the country that you're in. You want to work hard and have a fair go and make money and create a lifestyle for yourself and your family. And after a while, you go, well, hold on, no one's really celebrating you for wanting to wave the flag, so to speak, and be an ambassador of the country. And then on top of that, the environment that you're in makes it harder to do that. And you can see I'm not going to say a dark future here by any means, but certainly a less bright future. There's a dimming of the light here, where when my family moved to Australia when I was 4 years old, this was the fucking, the beacon on the hill, right? And so you're wow, this is a land of opportunity. We left the UK, even though my family in the UK were quite wealthy at the time. They left everything behind because the economy had gone to shit. The landscape in the northeast of England was toxic, and it was just a negative mentality and a culture there that was just quite horrendous. They walked away from everything, moved to Australia with nothing but just their suitcases, and I think they started with 10 grand.
Yep.
And rebuilt their life. My granddad has a Southern Cross tattoo because of the fact he says, I got more from Australia in the 25, 30 years of being here than I did in the 40 years that I was in the UK, right? Wow. And he loves the fact that he's an Englishman, right? But that was the Australia that my family came to and have tried to build. I'm not sure I could say that's the Australia that my daughter's going to live in. And so from that perspective, I think also as well that there's a generation that's growing up now that sees life as a global game, not a local game, that also think about business and connections and networks globally, not locally, where there's never been a better opportunity to go and travel and see the world. You know, we've got so many clients and business partners of ours that have gone, hold on, I can live a pretty mediocre or modest life in Australia on maybe $100,000, but I go and live in Bali. I live like a king or queen.
Yeah.
And I can still make all the same money I was making in Australia. But like we've got a number of partners that we've worked with in the past that have gone, I'm going to live in Bali and we're going to live it up.
Yeah.
And obviously most Australians love a Bali holiday anyway.
Yeah.
But beautiful culture, beautiful people. There's obviously a lot more friction in that landscape in some regards, but less in others, right? You can understand why a family makes that choice to make that. So if it's not still a great proposition for people today, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get a better proposition, and there's nothing you're fighting for, because you go, oh, when I try to fight for this, I'm getting criticized for celebrating Australia Day because that's apparently now a disgusting thing to do. You go, what am I even fighting for here? Like the thing that would keep you going is a sense of national pride to go, I'm paying money to the government because this is what I want to contribute to Australia. But what are we contributing for in Australia anymore? Like, what does that actually even represent in me?
Yeah.
And so anyone that starts asking that question opens a Pandora's box that goes, okay, if I'm high agency, I've got the ability to make something of myself, then I could do that anywhere in the world. And what we've also found as well is that, and this is not a knock on Australia, actually, it's a beautiful part of this country, but because we have such a small population relative to the global population, for the first 13 years of running this business, we slogged it out domestically, trying to make something happen. As soon as we opened up the American market, everything just became infinitely easier because you go from servicing a market of 26 million people, but only 12 or 14 million people work, to then 360 million people. Like, it's just a different world. And so you go, well, you naturally just people, even if you remove all of the other things that we've talked about and just go, human nature is that you go towards pleasure and you move away from pain. You go to what you're rewarded for. Right now, are you rewarded for being in Australia, or are you rewarded for moving overseas? You're rewarded for moving overseas. Are you rewarded for being patriotic or for not? Are you rewarded for standing up for your ideals or not? Are you rewarded for, in the fucking case of Ben Roberts-Smith, fighting and putting your life on the line and dying, potentially dying for your country, or are you not? Take away nothing from what that guy did or didn't do. We sent him to war 5 or 6 fucking times to represent that. He's got a chest full of medals. He's clearly done something right. And this is how you treat somebody. It's like, you make it, you represent us, we reward you, and then we fucking cut you down. That just seems to be a culture. And so you, after a while, you just go, I'm sick of being criticized. This is quite a harsh thing to say, but I think there are people out there, certainly I know I've had this experience, I'm just going to call it what it is. You get sick of being criticized for the people that are effectively you're paying for. You're like, why am I using my money to pay for you to criticize me? That's not a gig that works. I'd happily do it if I felt appreciated. But if I don't feel appreciated, then what am I doing it for? And so that's the problem I think that we got. And I think it's actually so easy in reality to change that culture. And I think an incredible example of a much worse situation that's become a really good situation is you look at Argentina. All right. Argentina, a lot of cases, quite comparable to Australia. Back in the 80s, I think they were on par with Australia in terms of GDP per capita, right? Doing incredibly well, considered the breadbasket of the world, right? Major exporter of food and produce and culture, and obviously amazing culture. And then went through periods of tremendous economic mismanagement, rampant fucking inflation, went bankrupt a number of times, and the new president's come in. I think they were at inflation at over 160%, and in 18 months he's got it down to 2%. Right? People are working again. There's a spirit of making things happen. There's investment into the country. That's the sort of fucking magic that you want to happen. That's incredible.
So the hope for Australia is just strong leadership, right?
I think I think that's the only hope that you have. And I think that starts individually. So to your first point, which was, what's your response? My response is always that I don't really give a fuck, because, not because I'm leaving the country, because even if I was going to be here, I'd go, okay, I believe I'm in control of my own destiny. So either accept the fact that you're going to stay here and live in this world and make the best of it and find one angle or another to be able to figure it out, right? Like some of the people that we already are connected with and some of our wealth advisors have already found ways to negatively gear property, have already found ways to be able to set up new company structures to be able to make it all happen. And we don't even know what the legislation is going to be yet. But wealth, intelligence, and money finds a way.
Yeah.
We saw Jurassic Park the other night. Like life finds a way. The wealthy will find a way, right? They'll find a way to make it happen.
They're amphibians.
Exactly. So I would have just found a way.
Yeah.
We would have found a way to make something work, and you would have got to the point where you've gone, okay, if it doesn't work, they'll find a way. Is we're going to leave the country. So I'm always have a stronger internal than external locus of control. But for the average person that maybe doesn't have that same level of agency, then it's just like I feel like the walls are just slowly creeping in, and you're going to get to a point where you go, geez, I feel like I'm a prisoner here and I can't make anything reasonably happen with myself. But it's not the government that's the problem. It's not incredible spending. It's not racking up $1.2 trillion of debt. It's not having massive levels of immigration where we really can't justify it. It's none of those things. It's high net worth investors that have got these negatively geared investment properties. Fuck right off. What a load of bullshit, right? It's the rich business person. That rich business person is paying everybody at the moment, including the fucking government, for them to stand up there and say that this is the bullshit. Like, it's a joke. The whole thing's a fucking joke. The government is run by people that have never actually run a business. I don't know what the stat is on this, but I'd love to find this out. How many people in this Labor government actually cut their teeth running an actual business? Like how many of them have built an actual business? Because I know that in the Liberal Party, that is absolutely the case.
Yep.
Think about what Turnbull used to do. Like what an incredible example, right? But you know what? I take my hat off to Albo, genuinely, because what a political masterclass. What an incredible chess move, right? You know that you can't win an election running on, I'm going to scrap negative gearing, I'm going to scrap capital gains tax, I'm going to scrap taxes to family trusts. I'm going to incorporate a death tax effectively through these testament. I know that I can't run an election on that. If I tell the truth, then no one's going to vote for me. So I'm going to come out and 50 times in a row say, absolutely, we're not touching any of these things, and present the absolute perfect rainbow opportunity against a very weak Liberal opposition and just decimate the Liberal Party. And then guess what? There's no opposition. So surprise, surprise, guys. That was all a scam. And we're actually going to roll out all of these changes that I knew if I told you about, you never would have voted for me for. But now because I've told you a lie and we got into power, I can do whatever fuck that I want because there's no opposition. Fucking, I take my hat off to the guy. Outrageous chess
Big
move.
kahunas.
Honestly, it's like Game of Thrones. It was like the Red Wedding. That's what he's done.
Yeah.
Incredible. I aspire to have that level of Machiavellian
Do
instinct.
you? I don't think you do.
Incredible.
It's a high level of deceit. That's what it is.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think it's fair to say that you guys are 50-50 for it. And
yeah.
Definitely not sitting on either side of the fence, actually.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But we get $250 though.
Yeah, I saw that.
Do we get that, though? I don't know if we do.
I think everybody gets it.
Do they?
Even Gina Reinhardt gets it. Like, I think everybody gets it.
Seems a little
right?
silly.
Well, that's a win.
Yeah.
And they're going to sell that as like a major investment to the everyday punter. Fuck right off. You know what that is? It's that inflation in the country is so bad that now everybody's going to be having bracket creep on their income. And so they're actually going to be paying more tax. And all you've done is you've gone, well, fuck, we can't, we could have just given everybody tax breaks. Or done what the Liberal government is encouraging people to do, to go, hey, let's just bracket the tax breaks with brackets with regards to inflation. So actually there is no bracket creep anymore, which seems like a completely reasonable thing to do. But no, I want my cake and eat it too. I want to be able to have massive inflation and also tax the shit out of people.
Yeah.
What a great, but here's you $250. Merry Christmas.
I
Happy New Year. Get something nice for yourself. $250 doesn't even buy a loaf of bread, a pint, and a tank of gas.
Certainly not a tank of
What
gas.
about doing $250?
Yeah. Look, I think
Put
in
it all
all of
on
that,
red.
I think in all of that, though, obviously you've got a big community of people that you guys are teaching, how to do business and how to structure their business and how to make money online. I think even though, notwithstanding everything that we're talking about in terms of this budget and what it's going to do to big businesses, you did say that your destiny is in your control. And I think as a closing piece, I think it's fair to say that that would be your message to to people out there that are brand new to business or building a business online, understanding that, you know, they do have a global reach and that they can effectively work from anywhere and they can structure it in the same way that you guys have structured it even here in Australia, right?
I would say this. I don't think there's ever been a better time in human history, and I don't care where you live. You could live in Australia or live anywhere else in the world. There's never been a better time in human history to be alive. I don't think there's been a better time in human history to start a business and to create and build wealth for yourself. A mentor of ours, Dan Priestley, said that our parents' generation were blessed with cheap real estate. We've been blessed with cheap business.
Yep.
So I think now it's probably a terrible time to this is actually globally terrible time to be an employee, because I think AI is going to decimate people. And I think one of the biggest missed opportunities of this budget was how little was actually talked about with regards to artificial intelligence.
I'd agree.
Because that's actually a nuclear bomb that's about to go off, that's going to go through the entire economy, and it's going to have a huge impact on so many different people. And I feel like this government's just asleep at the wheel with it. That should have been the major talking point. Should have been talking about going, hey, we're making a huge bet on artificial intelligence, and to ensure that this generation of employees and of the workforce are going to be AI enabled. That's really what should be happening. And that's what China's doing.
Yeah.
And we are a million light years behind, right? So, but notwithstanding that, there is a very small list of countries that you'd go, if you were choosing to be born today, please help me, just please let me be born in this country, right? And Australia's right at the top of that fucking list, right? Let's be very clear.
Yeah.
47%, 80% tax, doesn't fucking matter. The basic quality of life, if you were to struggle anywhere in the world, I'd want to struggle in Australia,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so that is, that opportunity, that's not lost on us. I'm blessed to call myself an Australian. I'm blessed to have our daughters to be Australian.
Yeah,
Obviously,
it's home.
I'm married an Australian.
Yeah.
Our families made it here in Australia. And we also need to appreciate that we are now living in a global world. And so if you can't, as a country, you are in a competitive landscape with all of the other countries of the world to get the very best talent and the very best people and the people that are going to be about what this country is. Australia has an incredible fucking brochure, which is our quality of life and our beaches and our way of life and our have it a go and our, like the Anzac spirit, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's fucking about.
Yeah.
But you got to fucking fight for that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't fight for that and protect it and guard it and make it happen, that's a real problem. And so I think they haven't done that. I think they've been asleep at the wheel with that. And so I'd still choose to be in Australia over many, 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 many other places in the world. But if I'm a young person today and I've got my wits about me and I've got an opportunity to call anywhere in the world my home, I'm not sure I'm looking to build and create a life here in Australia. I might look to come and retire here, but I'm just not sure if I'm looking to build a life here. And I think that that's an upsetting place to be, because this should be a mecca for going, bring the best and the brightest down under and let's do something amazing where you can have an incredible quality of life and build something amazing. Now that juxtaposition is just not there anymore.
Yeah. Ash, Calvin, appreciate your insights. Appreciate your time.